Good day. My name is Sherlock Holmes, and I am the CEO and owner of Genway Computer Systems. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to do a quick introduction to Genway Computer Systems and share a little bit about our partnership with TIBCO as a technology partner, and then I'm going to hand it over for today's presentation. So Genway Computer Systems is a New Jersey-based corporation. However, we have offices and we service clients across the United States. We do also work globally. I like referring to us as the smallest global company. We have offices in South America, in Montevideo, Uruguay. We have offices in South Africa, in Johannesburg. We also have an office in London, and we have relationships with companies in Mexico and across Africa providing services there. The United States is our primary location. Genway was formed in 1998. We're just over 21 years old. And we work with customers to implement solutions that leverage information as an asset. To do this, we have to focus in various technology areas. Back in the day when we started, we were known as an implementation partner for business intelligence and data warehousing. Before that, even, it was decision support systems. But today, when you look at the advanced analytics stack, there's a number of components that make it up. First, you've got to address your data provisioning and data optimization. And we leverage products from TIBCO to do that, including their TIBCO Data Virtualization. We also work with their Compute DB products. And, from this diagram, you can see we also use the data catalogs. And of course, master data management is critical in keeping their data clean and consistent. Genway also looks at how we deliver this information. And today we deliver that information through standard reporting or traditional business intelligence and enterprise reporting. We use TIBCO Spotfire for visual analytics and data exploration. And we use TIBCO streaming for real-time data processing. And then with all the new data sources that are coming around today, these technologies can integrate with each other so that you can analyze information from various sources, historical data, current data, and streaming live data. We also work in the field of augmented intelligence, which we break down into machine learning, into data science, and also natural language generation. Natural language generation, a little different to natural language querying, in that in natural language generation, we take data and we produce narratives that can be included in dashboards or shared as content with end consumers. Our partnership with TIBCO is an elite partner. We have a video available on our website. I won't play it today. Speaking about the relationship, this image was actually taken at the 2019 TIBCO Now when Genway won the Partner of the Year award. As you can see on the slide, we work with a number of different technologies. As I touched base on the types of technologies and what they do, here you can see the actual products. So using Spotfire, Streambase or TIBCO Streams, TIBCO's Live Data Mart, Data Virtualization, Compute DB, Statistica, TIBCO Data Science, TIBCO EBX for the MDM and reference data management solutions. We also do integration using TIBCO Scribe and the TIBCO Connected Intelligence Platform. Thank you for allowing me to present a little bit about Genway Computer Systems. I really hope that today's session is going to be beneficial. We conduct these pretty much on a monthly basis as informative sessions, hopefully expanding your use of the technologies and seeing the types of activities that Genway does where we could potentially assist you in implementing your solutions. Enjoy the rest of the presentation, and again, thank you very much for attending today.
Okay, today we're going to take a look at TIBCO Data Virtualization. Data virtualization allows us to put together a variety of data sources and make them available for our analyst platforms. When that platform is TIBCO Spotfire, this product is actually referred to as Advanced Data Services, as ADS. So the business use cases that I'm going to present today work in both platforms, but it's geared more towards Spotfire consumption. We're going to go through 4 use cases: flat file data mart, single metadata source, real-time with large data sets, and integrating API calls. And as we get into each of these cases, I'll make the business business justification for use of TDV, and then the TDV solution used to solve that business problem. In our first use case, this is a solution we've delivered to multiple customers in the past few years, the flat file data mart. We're actually going to talk about two different business case scenarios for this particular use case. In our first scenario, we have a situation where our distributors are collecting KPI information. So they collect our sales, inventory, and shipping times. And they send that information to us for analysis. Each distributor, puts together different formats and just different styles of information. So our analysts spend time, copying that information, formatting it, and merging it all together and getting something ready for use in Spotfire. With TDV, we can actually automate that process and lessen the burden of that manual effort of copying, formatting, and merging that data together. And we can, automatically make that available through TDV for Spotfire use. And within TDV as well, we can actually start to build a history of that data so that the analysts can look over the data over a period of time. In the second scenario, for this particular use case, we have a situation where we have new internal financial systems coming on board. The issue that's typically faced with new systems, it's going to take time for that information to be actually connected and flowing through normal ETL process into the data warehouse that exists at the company. But we need to be able to get to this information now and be able to start analyzing it, putting it together, and start consuming it within Spotfire. With TDV, we can use the capabilities of these new financial systems, which in most cases they do have their own, internally built business intelligence where they can generate reports out of this system. So with TDV, we can go ahead and grab those generate reports out of these financial systems. We can build a business model that can help conform the information from all these systems, put them together, and then make the data available for use within Spotfire. And the thing with using it within TDV is that once that data now becomes available in our data warehouse, we can continue to use our solution that was developed in TDV and all the Spotfire dashboards and all that good stuff, and we can just flip our source where it's coming from within TDV. And with that, we'll jump into TDV Studio and kind of walk through this particular use case. So we'll start off, as we first mentioned, so we'll have those, we'll take scenario 2 in this particular walkthrough. We're able to pull these reports out of our source system. So we have an automated process that'll take these files and dump it to a network location. Within TDV, we'll go ahead and we can actually read all these files and understand the actual data that's coming through. What we can do off the bat is we can actually create base views for each of these files to start to wrangle this data and get it into a format that we can start using down the line. This is also the point within the physical layer as well. We can actually use the functionality of TDV and start building ETL processes and procedures to move this data into perhaps tables that can later be fed down into the data warehouse. So once we're done with physical and we've got available the files, we got some baseline views, the magic really starts to happen when we start to work on and create a business layer for all this information. So what we can do is we can actually start to build a model based off the data that's available. And what we can start to see is we can actually start to conform our dimensions across our different data sources and start to organize the data. So understanding where our dimensions are and understanding where our measures and KPIs are and be able to identify the relationship between those tables. And this can be a blueprint down the line for incorporating this data into your warehouse. So in this particular example, our account information can be sourced from multiple files, but it's put together as a single dimension. It can be shared across transactions or open balance or balances, for example, and be able to conform between these two sets of KPIs. Once we get understanding a model, we would understand what the Spotfire's use case is for this data. We can actually start to create views of that data that can be consumed within Spotfire. So we're starting to put together the information from all the files based on our business model. And if we needed to add calculation or anything like that, we can create a data set that can easily be consumed right within Spotfire without having to put the data together in the tool itself. We can do that all within TDV and give a single view of the data for use in Spotfire. For our second use case, we're going to talk about having a single metadata source. And really the business case for this kind of boils down to this. There's multiple locations within the company. And the issue is that each location is running a version of the application. So they basically have their own instance of the application at each location. The issue is then you try to have a single set of dashboards that all the locations and home office can run and have them have all the same look and feel. The issue is if each one has their own instance, they each would have their own copy of dashboards. So you start to have variances happening across your different locations, and you lose that centralized approach that you want. With TDV, we can introduce the concept of bringing all these distinct locations together and creating a combined view of everyone's data, where then we can actually, having that single view of the data, create a set of Spotfire content that everybody can share. So the idea there is that everybody at location A, location B, and home office, they all share the same dashboard, but at the same time, with the features of TDV, we can also limit the data to those specific locations so that they don't see each other's data, but at the same time, home office can see everyone's data at the same time. So how we're going to do this in TDV is we're going to go ahead and link to and connect to each of the different data sources. We're going to create similar metrics that are needed out of each system, and then we're going to pull those all together in a single view. And we'll also be able to apply security in TDV, and we'll demonstrate that too as well within Spotfire. So within TDV, I've gone ahead and actually kind of expanded two different sites that we have. Just kind of want to show they run their own systems, but the systems are very similar. So within each one, we've created a view that's going to pull the metrics that we need for our dashboard. So that at the end of the day, as multiple sites as we have, we can actually go ahead and create a combined view that's going to pull all the data together for us and be used in Spotfire. So if you come here, we'll run it, and this is actually running against all the sources and give us a unique view of all the data. Within TDV as well, we can create security, has procedures. So as a user comes in to use this information, these procedures can be incorporated into the process. So in this particular example, we start off with nobody has data access, but as we start to add in different levels of access, row level security, we can start to open up the data to specific groups within our TDV environment. So once it's published and then once content is created, let's go and see how that looks like within Spotfire. So for example, I'm coming in, has one of my location admins, I'll come in and open up the corporate dashboard. So the corporate dashboard looks great. I see my metrics, but it's only my information. At the same token, the same dashboard, I can come log out of here. I'll log in. I'm now wearing my location B hat, and I'm going to be able to open up the same analysis that's available to everybody else. So coming in here, I come in, I see the same dashboard, I see my information, and say, okay, great, I'm doing well as well. But the true power of this is let me come in and log out. I'm going to come in and log in as myself. As the head of home office, I get to see how everybody is doing. And I can come in and open up the same analysis that both my location A and B opened up. And then, seeing it holistically, I can see, yes, my site, my location A is doing much better than my location B. So I can see how everybody else is doing, but the individuals at their sites are only limited to their data. And this is all happening through TDV. Our next use case, real-time with large data sets. The business case for this particular use case that we've implemented at quite a few clients is you have this analysis is making this large data request. So you need a lot of historical data. When you're making that request, especially to popular dashboard, is always having to go back and pull that information into Spotfire, especially if you start to apply different filters where that still large data set is always requested. The data set will impact the transactional system where this is getting read from. And so the idea here is let's identify this large data request. Can we break it up to, is there a historical portion that we know is not changing versus that amount that, we know is fresh and is new and is really the one that we're going after. So the TDV approach to this is to take that particular request that's being made and let's break that up into two distinct views. We'll create the historical view based on the business rules that were defined as to what is our historical data, and we'll have another view which we'll call our real-time view, which is always going to go against our data source. What we can do in TDV is we can schedule that historical view and we can cache it on a daily basis so that we're only making a call to our source once and the analysis still has the full historical perspective to bring that data into their dashboards. So let's take a look at how we do that in TDV and see that breakup. What we'll do here is we've identified what the view is causing a large data set. What we can do is we'll take that original query and we'll break it up into two different views. We'll have our historical and current. But really to get the understanding of how this affects, what type of data, how much data we're talking about. Let's take a look at the history rules. So the rules tell us anything that's prior to today is what we're going to consider historical data. So if I do a quick query on my data, I can see that the bulk of my data, it doesn't look significantly, but easily you can multiply this by 1,000 and you're going to get real world situations. So most of our data is happening in prior years. If we take a look at our business rule for real-time data, it's anything that's happening today, we go and take a look at that and, we only have 6,000 rows. So, you're talking multiple millions, you're talking 99% of your data is sitting in historical side. So, let's work in TDV and limit the amount of data that we're requesting from our source system every single time. So what we'll do in our first view is this particular view has our business rule in it where we're defining everything that's historical. But the key in this particular view is that we actually turned on caching. So the caching features within TDV will actually go ahead and make the query, bring back the data set, and save it within its own cache resources. So based on the frequency of when we need to update this, we can easily add a refresh schedule to this particular view. In this particular view, I have it set up to just refresh itself once a day. Next, we'll have our current view, which has our business rule for what current data is. And the key difference here is that this one is not cached, and it's actually going against the live data every time it's been requested. And then we have our third procedure, which actually will put these two together and allow us to have that full data set that we need for analysis within Spotfire. The key that I want to point here is let's take a look at our execution plan for this particular view. Now, we'll have a union here between our two data sets, but we'll take a look at them individually. So our first call is actually called and is pulling information from our cache resources. So our first part is not going back and calling our source data. It's pulling in from the cache that's already saved in TDV. And then our second call is actually going back and hitting our live SQL server and pulling in live information. So with this, we're able to present the entire data set needed for analysis, but then we're only limiting what part is actually hitting your live data system. In our last use case for today, we're going to talk about API data integration. So on the business side, a lot of our applications are going to the cloud and they're, now even SaaS-based. So your CRM systems and even some, your timesheet systems and all those kinds of systems are actually going into the cloud. Traditionally, you're able to get to those, to the source databases and incorporate that in your flow. With these now in the cloud, the only access that you're going to get to your data is either through custom extracts or through an API call. The same thing goes for data services that are available in the cloud. So, if you're going against an API that provides your company with up-to-date currency exchange rates, you're making an API call to that service and bringing that data down. Traditionally, which you have this in your Spotfire dashboards, every time somebody opens up a dashboard, they're making that API call. So for a SaaS-based service, you're not incurring costs, but for that data service that you're paying for, every time a dashboard makes a request, a charge is incurred on your company. And if you got very popular dashboards, those charges can really get out of hand. So the idea with TDV in this particular use case is let's use TDV to connect to those data sources. And what we can do in TDV, any API that's out there, there's enough capabilities within TDV to connect to that. But as we bring that data down, we're able to then modify that data, put it in different tabular formats, and be able to incorporate it into other sources that are already available. And to reduce the incurring charges that can occur, we can also cache those results and set up a schedule similar to what we did with our historical one. We can set up a schedule based on how frequently that data is changing. Let's take a look at the examples in TDV. In this particular one, we're actually going to start off with the actual data source for the APIs. There's a lot of configuration options for APIs. So depending on the documentation that's available and how you're going to get to the API, you'll incorporate those same requirements within this data source when you set it up. So in this particular example, we'll start off with a base URL for our APIs, but the real key is at the bottom where we start to actually add all our different endpoints. So it supports all the different functionalities that are available through APIs, so we can make a get, post, we can put and delete, so whatever is available. Typically, we're playing with get or post. With a get, if there are variables that are available, we can actually pass that through as variables within TDV. Or if it's a post, we can actually use the headers and bodies section of our setup for this particular data source, and we can add in those parameters as needed. But for this particular example, we just have a currency, and we're going to just take a look at one of the particular endpoints that are set up and go ahead and execute our call. So our call to our API service will actually bring back some JSON data. This JSON data on its own is great, but it's really not useful for us to incorporate it into the rest of our data. So what we can do with this particular call is we can actually incorporate it within a procedure. And this is a procedure within TDV. We'll take this data and actually create this JSON data and put it in tabular format. So now making the same call, we're able to know, making USD calls, we know all the different currencies and what the current exchange rates. We're then able to take this information, and instead of having it always make a call, we can again set up caching on this API call. And we can again set up the schedule, say, hey, we want this to only be periodically updated so that it's not always making a call to the service to pull down the data. If it's not changing frequently, you can change this to match that frequency of how often this data is being refreshed. But the good point is, once this data is now here available, we can then go ahead and actually combine this information with other data that's available in TDV. So in this particular case, if we go ahead and run, for example, we have our amount in our local currency, but then we can go ahead and create additional columns that can fix it to a currency that everybody can work with and be in compliance with. And then this particular view can go ahead and this is what Spotfire can actually use for its dashboards and be able to easily switch between local currency and USD without having to go ahead and do those calculations and integrate API and Spotfire and things like that. We do all that work on the TDV side, and then we can make all that available to Spotfire. Thank you for the time today. That wraps up our 4 use cases that we wanted to cover today. On the screen is some additional contact information if you want to get a hold of us, but thank you very much.